Maybe we should put that on the board. There are some people here who have some ideas for that. Some of the vendors. They're good ideas. Yeah. Yeah. Right. That's a good idea.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the part where we get down to the nitty-gritty of what Lion is all about, which is us sharing our ideas and experiences. You have to do it very quickly. We're going to try and get through 30 ideas in the next half an hour, 30 ideas in 30 minutes. What you have discovered over the past year that was a grand success, something that fell on its face. Just quickly share your experiences and how you think it might be applicable to somebody else. So who's going to go first? Let's see a hand. Denise.
Hello, I own the Racine County iNews website in the thriving metropolis of Racine, Wisconsin. One of the things that worked really well for us was my marketing and ad salesperson, Trudy Coombs, came up with this concept she called the 80-20 deal. So basically one of the things that we noticed was that we weren't really getting a lot of the small Main Street mom and pop shops, and we really looked at our price points as we wanted to pull them in and help Main Street. So the 80-20 works like this. So we have a rotating ad that we use on a 12-second rotation. It's capped at 10 ads in the space. We charge them $80 a month. They give us $20 in trade, and then what we did was we actually tied that trade to leverage our newsletter. So if you were an email newsletter subscriber, you ended up getting into the drawing, a weekly drawing for one of our advertisers' giveaways. So what we did then was we would get the drawing, and then we would advertise for that specific week an extra week worth of ads, so it had a lot of value. We saw an increase of probably, we started off the year at 1,100 newsletter subscribers, and now we have about 1,800. So that really helped boost our interactivity with our newsletter, and that's one of the things that really helped us a lot. And then we, instead of just making $100 on that ad space, we make $800 a month in that ad space. We maximized what we were able to do.
That's great. Who's next? Get those hands up. Who's got ideas?
Right here. Alice Dreger, East Lansing Info. We wanted to really impress upon our readers that our mission is to be the factual news source for the city of East Lansing. So my managing editor, Ann Nichols, came up with a great idea, which is when somebody sends us in a factual correction, we reward them by giving them an Eli t-shirt. So the idea is we want you to correct us. We want you to hold us accountable to the facts. And that's really worked great, because we say to people, we don't mind corrections. We don't want to have to make corrections if we don't have to. But if we get something wrong in an article, tell us. We will fix it, and we will reward you as part of the team. So that's worked out really well.
I've got a question about that popped up. You mentioned this like a week ago.
Yeah, on the INN site.
And I didn't get a chance to type it in there, but how do you deal with the trolls who are sending you factual corrections?
Well, the trolls are wrong, so we don't have to reward them.
Yeah, but how many are you getting, and how do you reply?
Oh, it's like once a week that we get an error. We spelled somebody's name wrong, or we try not to make these errors. We spelled somebody's name wrong, and one thing that I actually reported, I had a date wrong of a year, and so somebody sent it in and said, I think she meant such and such a year. So they're small things, but we say to people, when you're reading, we want you to read all the time for, is this true, is this true? We're trying to do media literacy in our city at the same time we're doing news. So we engage people in media literacy. So this says to them, you're part of the reporting team, you are part of the generation of factual knowledge in this town.
Just going to step out here. My name is Carol Robidoux. I'm in Manchester, New Hampshire with Manchester Inkling. This is just something that a lot of you already know and do, but this year I got a press release about a co-working space that was opening, so I said, oh great, I put it in posted it with some pictures, and I sent back a note, and I said, this is great. I love the space. It's great right downtown. I said, you guys wouldn't want to swap like a space for an ad, and the guy said, "Oh no, well we love the Ink Link, we love what you're doing, so just come on down. You know, we don't want an ad, we just want you here, and just keep bringing people in." So I've had a delegation of Chinese journalists come in. I've had a local networking group come in. I threw myself a 4th birthday party for no particular reason except that who knows if 5 ever comes, but I invited the governor, the mayor, and guess what? The governor and the mayor both showed up and read proclamations to me, and it was like better than a funeral party because I got to see it. But these guys also are very tech savvy and used to run a website that made them millionaires, in finance. So they want to help me succeed because as real estate guys and as entrepreneurs, they see what I'm doing and they love my excitement and they want to help me. So they've become like mentors to me in a way. It's just like that connecting with other businesses and people in your community can make all the difference. And it was like the best thing I did to give me a downtown presence. People can make office hours with me. But like I said, you can also invite 20 Chinese journalists to your office to talk about the differences in journalism here and there. And it really feels impressive, to people watching. So I'm doing exciting things and everybody can see it. So that's all. That's something you should look into if you don't have an office space. See if you can bargain for one. It doesn't cost me a penny. It's great.
Great idea. Who's next? Get those hands up, because if you're not raising your hands and taking one for the team, I'm just calling. Don't want that.
Oops.
Hi, I'm Lila LaHood, and because you asked nicely, I'm going to talk about a newspaper. I'm with the San Francisco Public Press. We're online, but we also do a quarterly print newspaper. There are no ads in it, which I know it's not that we're against ads. We've just chosen a different approach. We're nonprofit. We're funded by grants and membership. People say, "Oh, do you make money with the newspaper?" No, we do not make money with the newspaper. We do sell the newspaper, but really, this is a marketing device that pays for itself. We put it out in retail locations. People pay $1. There's also an envelope inside. And when people really like it, they put a check in the envelope or they go to our website and they send us money. And we find that people who have seen the print edition or connect with us at events have a stronger connection to the organization. It's also a great thing. We have a guy who goes over to City Hall and drops copies of this in every office. And actually, we're going to expand to other government agencies. So we know this is getting in the hands of people who are decision makers in the city, and our reporting is having some influence. If anybody's interested and wants to talk to me about print, I've got copies here, and there are also some on the swag table. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make Dylan come back to me. I'm Ned Burke. I'm with the Center for Cooperative Media. I got a really easy idea. How many of you have email newsletters? How many of you send a confirmation email that says you have to click this link to confirm your email address? How many people have just a MailChimp thank you for subscribing to our email on that page? Okay, you can make that a page on your site. It's a 2-minute change in MailChimp, and you can then send them to, say, your Facebook group. You could send them to a series that you like, an evergreen, or you could just give them a share button to share your email list with your email newsletter with other people and get more signups. It's a wasted opportunity.
I think I'm doing this. I'm doing this tonight. What? I'm doing that tonight. That's on the list. Thank you. Who's up? Here you go.
All right, I'm Greg Hanscom with Crosscut in Seattle. I have to stand up. And my idea is one that I stole from the San Francisco Chronicle about I guess it was 2 years ago now. They announced that they were getting a whole coalition of media organizations in San Francisco together to cover homelessness. We thought that was a great idea, and so Crosscut instigated a similar thing in Seattle and surrounds. I'm happy to talk more about this later, but in the end, we were able to get 30-plus media organizations from around Seattle to get together for a full day of coverage of homelessness. It's something that we now do every year. They're doing it in San Francisco as well. And we got the big dogs on board as well. We did that by pulling together first a coalition of the local and hyper-local media outlets in town, and then went to the Seattle Times and King 5, the local TV news station, and others, and said, this big thing is happening. You guys want to be on board? And they all jumped on board. It was an amazing way to raise Crosscut's profile, and I think we also may have really raised the awareness of homelessness in the process as well.
My name is Tim Choate. I'm with Murfreesboro Voice, just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. We've done something that's kind of interesting in the contributor compensation side of things. I think you guys might be interested in. Is it on? Hello, is this on? Yeah, it's on. Okay, it's on. Maybe I just need to talk louder. So what we've done is tried to automate the contributor compensation system and do that based on human views of the content that gets contributed. We have a sister organization that is on the software side. So the way that works is whatever revenue you have from the news site. I'll try another one. Okay. Could you guys hear that? Okay. Let me summarize it. So we've tried to do something innovative in terms of compensating contributors to our online news site. And what we do is we track the human views on the content. We keep track of the contributor that submitted that, and then we turn around and do a distribution to those contributors at the end of each month based on the number of human views, the amount of traffic that they have driven on the website. So we have a sister organization that's more on the software side. I don't know how we would have done that otherwise, but we're in a position where we don't really do much guesswork in terms of who should be compensated. The interesting thing is that we've had good response from like government organizations, the local sheriff's office, all those guys signing up to be contributors to the news site. And one of the things that we've been able to do that I'm kind of proud of is in the case of like government entities like sheriff's office, instead of paying them a distribution at the end of the month, we allow them to designate a charity, and then that money gets donated to that charity in their name. So
I know it's going to get a few more hands in the air. I forgot to mention, we're going to vote on the very best idea when we're done here, and the winner is a $100 gift card. And a bunch of hands start popping up.
Hi, I'm Marcy Setlow from the Berkshire Edge. I know I've spoken to you in past years about our online calendar, and so we were trying to figure out a way to drive more traffic to our online calendar, which in turn drives traffic to our site, since it's very much embedded in there. So we actually started to publish a magazine. We like you, are going from online to print. So I have copies here of the first two issues, but we published really glossy, I mean, it's a beautiful magazine, 64 pages, good stock, and what it is it's a preview of what's going to be happening in our area in the next 4 months. We give, an overview of activities, but we don't give the details. And we have throughout the magazine, we are urging people to come to our online calendar for all the details. And in 1 month, the traffic to 1 month after we started passing these out, our traffic went up 45%. So it really worked. What I'm also finding is that I'm reaching advertisers who were not interested in advertising online. So in our first magazine, which then apparently this is unheard of, we made a profit on our very first issue, and we're making more of a profit on the second issue. And I think, and we've done them at the very last minute, so we really didn't have time to sell ads. But some of the features that we have is we have a profile of each of the important towns in the area, And so we go to the businesses in those towns and suggest that they advertise around that page. We also have day trips. Every issue we have a day trip to a different area, which is within driving distance of where we are. And so we go to advertisers who never would have advertised with us before, but they want our audiences to come to do a day trip to them, so I'm getting advertising from them also. And the packages that I'm selling for advertising are both in print and online. So that, and this is unusual. This is an unusual package. You get a free ad in the calendar when you buy, or it's not free, but the package is you buy the magazine, you also get the calendar. And I'm beginning a promotion of, if you also want to be in the rest of the Berkshire Edge, we give you a discount. And now we're trying to go out and sell the whole upcoming year instead of one magazine at a time. So we'll see how that works. But this has been it's been a lot of work, but it's been very successful for us. And what we find now is, because the calendar is really becoming the go-to calendar for our area, we have more and more organizations that are posting their events. More and more they know who we are. More and more, when they think about advertising their events, they come to advertise on the Berkshire Edge. So it has been a really good audience advertising and community building effort for us.
Thank you. Shireen.
I'm Shireen Seward from Wausau Pilot and Review. We're in central Wisconsin, and Wausau is a community that is surrounded by a number of smaller towns and villages. So you can actually just cross the street from the city of Wausau and go into the town of Rib Mountain, so we do a really good job of covering city and county issues, and a lot of those meetings are televised, but we don't do a great job of covering all of those little villages around us, and those are not televised meetings, and no other media outlet is covering that either. So with limited resources and staff, we wondered how we could possibly service those communities and really make sure that there's no funny business going on behind the scenes, and that they're getting their message out. So we ended up rolling out a citizen journalism program where we take applications for citizen journalists to sit in on those meetings. We don't say that they're reporters, or we don't actually call them journalists, but they're bloggers for us. So they volunteer to go to the school board meeting that isn't being televised, or they go to a town of Rib Mountain meeting or a village of Weston meeting that otherwise would not be reported on. And they sit in, and then 24 hours later, they submit to us 350 words about what they saw. Just what did they observe? It doesn't have to be anything, anything fancy, but we post it then as a documenter who documented the meeting, and we pay those people based on the idea that they might be at a meeting for an hour, and it might take them an hour to produce that. So we pay them at a rate of $15 an hour. So it's about $30 for each one of those assignments, and that's been a great way for us to expand our reach. And we're a nonprofit, so we were able to get a grant to cover those expenses. But it also helps those smaller communities really feel tuned in to your newspaper and to your news publication, that we're not just covering the big stuff. So it's been a really great program so far, and we've gotten some real gems with our program too. A couple of former journalists and an English major. So I mean, it's worked out really well. So I'm here if you want to talk to me more about it. I'd love to talk to you.
Okay, just show of hands, how many of you have over 500 unread emails in your inbox? Okay, this is something that might help take the pressure off. There's a little, if you have this is for G Suite users or Gmail users. There's a little publicized setting in Gmail. It's under Mail, Settings, go to Inbox, and it's called Priority Inbox. I have used it for the last 4 years, and it is a wonder to behold. What it does is Gmail just starts to learn who you respond to, who do you write to, which emails do you reply to, which ones do you throw away. And it begins to just sort of gradually learn that, and over the course of time, it just puts the important stuff at the top, It doesn't delete anything. Everything else lands in another section that you designate as, I call it, everything else. But at the top is the stuff that's important. And it is remarkably intelligent at surfacing the things that are important. And I only have 22 unread emails that matter in my inbox right now. It's amazing. And this is the second thing. This is also Gmail. Also a little known tool. It's called canned responses. How many of you find yourself writing the same response to a press release or an input over and over and over and over again? Gmail has a way for you to simply write the response one time, give it a name, and then send it every single time after that. And in fact, if you want to, you can even automate it. So if you get an email from somebody into a particular email box that you've flagged in some way, it'll automatically send the response on your behalf. So 2 time savers, priority inbox, it will change your life.
And Jay, just piggybacking on that idea, if you're an Outlook user, you can set in your signature box if you met somebody at a particular event, Chamber of Commerce, any event, and you want to follow up, just select that signature, populate the email, write the email, change the name, obviously, and send it out. It's a quick life hack.
Hi, I'm Glenn Perkins with QCityMetro.com in Charlotte. We've known for a long time that local events were important to our readers. We survey our readers, and when we ask them what's important, the top thing they've always said is we want to know about local events in town. But we could never figure out how to make money on it. We tried doing upgrades where people who submit their events could upgrade for $100 or whatever. We'd pick up a few hundred here or there, but nothing substantial. So what we decided to do was put together packages for big organizations that do a lot of events. If we would let people upload their events for free. There's no charge to upload an event. We charge to promote the event. And so let's say there is a performing arts center and they do lots of events. So we'll sell them a package of 24 events over the course of the year. I think it's 24, 12, and 6. And we go to these organizations that we know do a lot of events, and we sell the promotion, not the listing. And we set a modest goal for the first year of $30,000. It took no time to reach that, which was more money than we made with events all the other years combined. And because we're doing more with them, we're sending them out on push notifications because we're promoting those events now. We're putting them in our newsletters. What else are we? All kinds of stuff. I'm sorry. Social media. Social media. I'm sorry. How much do you charge? I think the 12. Help me out, Katrina. I think the 24 is about 7,000, and I think the 6 is 4,000 or something like that. But there are things that we do to help promote the events. That's the thing. And because people are seeing us promoting those events more, we're getting a lot more people putting events on our calendar, free events, but we're not having to do it as much anymore.
Hi, I'm Adrian with Mendocino Voice in Mendocino, California. And so we built, and we're trying to do several of these, we built a data scraper, little application to the California Highway Patrol posts every incident that they respond to, they post it online. It includes a lat long, and it's just the summary of the different codes that they're responding to. So we created a little data scraper that is actually not running right now because it didn't interact well with the latest upgrade on WordPress. But it's still running on Amazon, on the Amazon server, so it's still scraping the data, it's just not publishing. So I took the page down. But basically, as the incident's happening on the California Highway Patrol page, it shows it, but as soon as the incident's done, it pulls it off. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to gather all of that data about every incident the Highway Patrol responds to and build it into a larger data project, but also just keep it on our homepage, so people can go back later and see, oh, was that accident I passed by? What was that cause of that traffic jam? We live in a place with very bad roads, that a lot of mudslides and stuff, and so people are kind of obsessed about that. And we want to expand this into actually a set of data scrapers, where we'll look at, there's all this public data that's actually online, so for everything from river gauges, so that you can kind of look at flooding, to some of the stuff that the fire department puts out, and eventually have a suite of data scrapers that we collate and then paywall everything that's not today. So it's part of what we're trying to do with developing a paywall, because we don't want to paywall the front page. We don't want to paywall most of the actual journalism, because that's how we're building the readership. But this is a little extra thing that we can give to subscribers.
So just to follow up point, Uriah Kaiser, Potomac Local, about data scrapers, we developed one for obituaries, and so we scrape all of the the obituary websites in our coverage area, and we link directly to those sites. And secondly, if there are any scanner breaking news buffs in the room, when we launched our paywall, we kept breaking news outside of the paywall because it drives page views and makes advertisers happy. We downloaded Pulse Point, and that's a great app if your county or city uses Pulse Point. It's a blessing, because you never have to wonder, hey, where's that address? Where are those guys going? It just populates in a set of data on your phone. Download it if you do.
Hi, I'm Marlena. I'm with Prosper Peak Marketing, but really here for Carol at Manchester Inklink. And one idea that we're beta testing is saving time and money, which we all love, and it's automating how people submit press releases, obituaries, which is also another great idea that they had, and birth announcements, all those different things. So people can actually submit it through a Gravity form on our WordPress website and self-select what they're submitting, and based on what they're submitting, it will be a specific price point, and then they can just hit submit. And we're also trying this with ads as well, so we're in the beta phases, but if you have questions, we'd love to talk to you. And it was an idea that we got from looking at all of your sites and stalking them. So I originally saw it on Vermont Digger with Carol, so keep up the good work, everyone, because we love stealing all your ideas.
Thank you.
Hi there, Ryan Belmore from What's Up Noop, Newport, Rhode Island. Two ideas, just digital media, you're not walking down the street and you're not just falling on our websites. Two things I've found that working when we're looking to market ourselves, very important to do. One of them is started 15 minutes going on a local AM station. Most of us might have AM radio. A lot of the times they need the content. That went from 15 minutes once a week. Now we're on 3 radio stations, 9 hours a week, promoting our content, as well as keeping me way too busy. And then another one is if you most likely you have restaurants, hotels. We found ways to become very good friends with those people. Those people are recommending, if you have things, event calendars, I'm hearing event calendars, things to do. We take those people, we partner with a sailing company, we live on an island, and twice a year we take different people who work in hotels, restaurants, out for a sail, treat them to drinks, wine. Dylan, you can come next time. And
thank you.
And we let them know what we're doing in the community, because most likely word of mouth is the best way to spread what we are doing on our website. So when you're sitting there for a beer, or when you check in at your hotel, oh, go on whatsupnoop.com, and they have everything that's going on this weekend. So don't forget to market yourselves, as well as partner on AM radio stations and things like that.
Really good idea. Crystal.
Crystal Knapp, Planet Princeton. For the last year, I've been earning commissions from some of my advertisers. So Warby Parker, the eyeglass company, is my biggest partner. I earn several $100s a month from them, especially when people have to spend their flexible spending account money at the end of the year. And so there are platforms like Share a Sale, where you go in and you apply to become a partner with a company. They vet you. They might say, yes, we accept you. No, we don't. So you have control over who's on your site. And then I have a page, like if you buy through these companies, we earn a percentage. So like with the eyeglass company, I earn 25% of every sale. So.
We've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Remember, your bright idea might be worth $100 if it's popular. There's another hand back there.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Clark with Newshawk, and I'm on the ad side of things, but this is actually going to be separate from that. How many of you have reader comments posted after your stories? Okay. How many of you dread going in there and being the monitor of those comments, right? Because they kind of get off track and they take someone into the weeds, and pretty soon everyone's just talking about the comments that are all snarky and not the actual story, right? Well, we kind of got tired of that at Newshawk, and our publisher, Bill McFadden, who's not here today but says hi to everyone, for those of you that know Bill, he decided to remove reader comments from the stories. And he writes a weekly column, and he explained it in his column why we were making this decision. We just didn't have the manpower to go in there and monitor, these mostly just a handful of people that had aliases and weren't even really identifying who they were anyhow. But we did want to give our readers a voice, so we were going back to the more traditional, old-fashioned way of writing a letter to the editor in full sentences with thought behind it and your full name, your real name, and, take ownership of your ideas. So we are now publishing, 4 to 5 letters to the editor weekly, and if somebody wants to respond to that, they can write another letter. But we got such an overwhelmingly positive response from our readers saying, thank you so much for taking away the reader comments, because it was just becoming really uncivil discourse. We had a few people saying they thought it was a disappointment because, they want to have a voice and all that. But, that's what Facebook's for. All of our stories are posted on Facebook, and they can just go at it on Facebook and have as many comments as they want. So if you're trying to save a headache and some manpower and engage people in a way that is really much more meaningful, that would be a suggestion. Thanks.
One more. I'll make it 2 more because you guys tied raising your hands.
Hi, I'm Barry Friedman with the Lakeland Now in Lakeland, Florida. This is going to sound very non-sexy and probably very obvious, but our biggest audience attractor this year was a voter guide, something that probably we all do, but we did it in a little bit different way this year. In the past, I used to work for a daily paper in their website. It was owned by the New York Times, and we did a really full voter guide with questions and answers. They don't do it anymore. They're a gatehouse paper. They don't have the manpower. So I did something a little bit differently. I just put together a quick voter guide. Not quick. It took a day or 2 to put together, but basically summary of all the races that were on the August primary ballot, and then links, just lots of links to campaign finance reports, social media, websites. So it basically became a way that the reader could research all the candidates. Lots of great response from it. The community loved it. And like I said, it's our most popular content all year.
Thank you. Right behind you. There you go.
Hi, Lance Noble from Berkeley side. This is really an internal thing, but it also has an external benefit. How many use Slack here? Okay, most. We created a Slack channel that's called Community Praise, and when someone phones us or emails us or puts in our comments, we still have comments on our stories, and it's a headache, but we still think it's a net benefit. Whatever. And there's praise at Berkeley side. We log it there, and now that's a nice sort of regular injection of good feelings for everybody that works on Berkeley side, but it's also a fantastic way to capture those thoughts for membership campaigns or whatever, and we have a great log of it there.
That's a really good idea. We do something similar. We have a Slack channel for impact, and when we are out there in the community, if we speak at an event, take part in something, if one of our stories actually creates some change and fixes the problem, we make sure to note that, so a year later when we're trying to summarize what we've done, we don't have to remember all of it. But trying to track kudos is probably a really good thing to do as well. Yeah. So up next, we're going to dig into a little bit of research on the current state of local online publishing.
Hello again. Same me, different project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the INN index, which is a new survey of nonprofit news organizations, and it's something we did this year with the Institute for Nonprofit News. It's the most comprehensive study so far of nonprofit online news startups in the U.S. And the full report, you can see the URL there, is at inn.org/INN-index. The survey had showed that the field of nonprofit news is, much like the field you're in, is a growing one. It's one of the few areas of growth that we're seeing in news these days with so much retrenchment of the traditionals. 3/4 of the organizations launched since 2008, which is also when we saw a bit of a spurt with the for-profit. At that time when there was the reckoning was really getting underway particularly for local newspapers. So we projected from the study that these organizations are the 180 organizations in INN are generating nearly $350 million in revenue a year, and they're employing 3,000 people, 2,200 of whom are journalists. Small, very small compared to the big traditional industry, but still impressive and definitely growing. I think it's very important in the current environment. I've talked earlier about fake news and disinformation, that this is a sector that's heavily focused not only on original reporting, but on in-depth reporting. Relatively few, about 20%, are covering local news. These organizations are much more state, multi-state, regional, national organizations, and some global. So they're sort of not really mostly in the same playing field that a lot of you are, which starts to tell me that we've got these two groups growing up that are very complementary in a lot of ways. They keep a very, very tight focus on civic topics. I don't know why my slides are doing that, sorry. They cover, 3/4 of them cover government. 2/3 cover environment. Education is a big topic. Most of them cover just a few topics. They're not anywhere near as general as traditional media or even as general as many of you are. When the big boom happened in 2008 to 10, about half of the organizations that launched were primarily investigative. So they're not publishing every day, far from it. Then there was a big spurt of single topic news organizations. So that, they're covering only education, Chalkbeat, for example. They're covering only environment. So these are very, very focused organizations. I think the big news is that the revenue picture is a lot brighter than it was even 5 years ago. These were organizations back in the day, some of which would launch with a 2-year grant and no plan, and then they'd be gone in 2 years. So a big change here, we're seeing that they're developing a decent amount of revenue. Half are generating $500,000 or more. And more than half of them have 3 different revenue streams. So, you folks also, when you're in the for-profit side, talk about revenue diversity and the importance of revenue diversity. So these organizations, the nonprofits, are starting to achieve this to varying degrees. These are averages, and there's quite a range of performance in there. They're still mostly getting their money from charitable sources. 90% come from charity. Foundations are still big funders in nonprofits. Donations, individual giving accounts for about 1/3 of the money. They're very squarely on the charitable side. The 3% on there that is for advertising really reflects relatively few large national organizations. So it's kind of skews it with a fair amount of money. So nonprofits are not going to be competing with you to sell ads now or any time in the future. I mean, I think that I and others recommend that they develop more earned revenue, especially probably around events and sponsorships. But for these folks, we think that the big area where they can grow their revenue is actually on donations. As more and more people become alarmed at the current news environment, there's a lot more ability, I think, to raise money with donations. And that may be, you may be seeing this in some form as well. We're starting to see some variations in the revenue models. Single topics have more grants. Multi-topics have more donors. The locals tend to have more donors. The nationals tend to have more grants. So there's some different kinds of models that reflect their different missions, the journalistic mission. They're very young, like the for-profits. They're mostly very young. The average one the median is 8 years. You can see the big spike back in 2008, 9, and 10, where more than a third of them launched. The older organizations have higher revenue and greater reach online. So it's clear that age matters in the field, that it does take time to get to a place of stability and both in terms of revenue and profile. What we're also seeing with the nonprofits is some of the younger ones are looking at multiple revenue sources right out of the gate. So you don't as often see well, I've got a grant for 2 years, so I'm just going to work with the grant. It's like, okay, the first year we had a lot of donors. The second year we're going for foundations. The third year we're starting a membership program. They're getting more and more aggressive, and I think they're benefiting from the work that publishers that have gone before have figured out. So the learning curve seems to be smoothing out a bit. Like yours, they're lean operations. They spend about 2/3 of their money on editorial. I would like to see them spend more than 10% on revenue generation. You've heard me talk about this before. They're small. The 8.3 is the median. They range anywhere from 1 to 50 or none, no paid staff, to 50. So they're quite small. The audience development is a big issue for nonprofit publications, and some of your members here who are nonprofits can probably speak to this. You have about a third that are primarily publishing direct up to their websites. You have a third that are primarily publishing through other publications. So the local newspaper is running their investigations, and the publisher is allowing that without charging for it. And then you have a third that are kind of a mix. What we're starting to see, though, is that the ones that do third-party publication are watching those platforms diminish. In other words, the newspapers are continuing to cut back. So they're looking more and more at developing their own direct audience. So I think that's kind of the biggest change. So just to close up here, it's really clear that the nonprofits, like the for-profits, are filling really critical gaps right now in local news. And I think we're going to hear a little bit later about news deserts as well that are emerging. We think they can do a lot more to nourish individual giving, including membership, like I said, as opposed to maybe going after your advertisers. And we think they need to really look at more sophisticated ways of targeting audiences and building their relationships with audiences. That's probably, in some cases, the weak point for a lot of them, although they do a lot of events to engage. So that's the quick recap of the study, and I'm going to bring up Sarah Stonebly here to talk about a study that she's done at Montclair.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me. This is my first time at Lion, and I'm really happy to be here. Let me just hopefully not screw this up too much. Where might I find the slides?
Okay.
Right there, Stonley Lion. Oh, that's not, you know what, I sent you some revised slides. That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
No big deal.
I think we want to.
Yep.
There we go.
Great. Great. Adjust further. Great. So this is actually, it's a nice panel because this is my research complements Michelle's in that I looked at for-profit publishers, and some of you in this room participated in my study, so I really appreciate that. It was a study to ask, you know, we hear so much about what, you know, sort of the state of local news, it's not good, things are not going well, but we all know from our own experience that there are a lot of bright spots, and there actually are a lot of success stories out there right now. So that was the research question that I wanted to address, is what does success look like right now for online local news publishers and outlets? So again, focusing on for-profit outlets and talking to more than 43 total. We talked to about 60 publishers, but we had in the end 43 complete, mostly interviews, a couple surveys. Matt helped push out a survey to some of you, and some of you filled it out, so I really appreciate that very much. And we ended up, right, with a total of 43 responses. So it's not a huge response, so we don't want to generalize too much. We don't want to you know, say this is, you know, this is what everyone's doing, this is what success looks like, you know, period. But we did do sort of a thorough lit review as well, and we thought that the findings were pretty, you know, along the lines of what others were experiencing. So I hope it rings true for you. I'm missing a slide here, which is my fault, but I'm going to tell you, we had 4 criteria for success, and I kind of hate that word, but I didn't really think of a better one. I used thriving and struggling as an alternative, but we had 4 criteria that we used for successful outlets. They were publishing 5 years or more, gross annual income in the past year of $25,000 or more, $25,000 or more, profitable 12 of the last 12 months, and finally, the publisher takes a paycheck. The publisher takes a paycheck from the site. So of the 43, only 11 of the outlets met all 4 criteria. So it was a pretty strict standard. And then I was like, there are more who are doing, you know, and I looked at the list of outlets that didn't qualify, and I was like, no, I know some of these outlets are doing better than what this indicates. So in the end, we went with met 3 or more criteria, because you know, sometimes the publisher's not taking a paycheck because all of the profit's being put back into the outlet, right? Or sometimes, you know, they weren't profitable because X, Y, or Z. So anyway, in the end, we had 23 outlets that we looked at out of the 43 who met 3 or 4 of our criteria for success. So we have these 23 outlets, and then we asked, you know, which factors might be related to success? Because there have been several studies out recently that have suggested that, for example, publisher background. You know, a publisher who has a background in legacy journalism might be able to capitalize on his or her network to either, you know, gain legitimacy or gain more, you know, startup capital, you know, have more sources, something like that. So maybe it's better to come from a legacy journalism background. We wanted to test that out. Multiple revenue streams, as Michelle just discussed. I'm sure we've all heard a lot about how important it is to have a lot of different revenue streams to, you know, sort of diversify and hedge bets. So we wanted to look at that as well. And then finally, the wealth of the community. So, right, this gets into the news desert hypothesis and stuff like that. Is it important, or does it matter to an outlet's success whether the wealth of their community is high or low? So those were the 3 sort of structural factors that we wanted to test out. And I'm just going to go through what we found. The only statistically significant factor was the wealth of the community, meaning that the only structural factor that we found to be statistically related to predict success was the wealth of the community. And you can see here that 96%, or 22 out of 23 of the successful outlets were in a mixed or high income, right? So middle, high, or mixed income. So at least some level of wealth in the community. And then conversely, 25% of the struggling outlets were in low-income communities. So there's a lot to say about that, which we're going to have to do at a later date, but probably will be discussed again. But that was sort of one of the top-line findings. On the one hand, very discouraging, but on the other hand, sort of good to put some numbers to that and dig into that a little bit more. Publisher background. Maybe a slight advantage. 78% of thriving outlets publisher had a background in legacy media, but 60% of struggling outlets publishers had a background in legacy media. And I sort of thought of this in two ways. Number one, we're still so close to that legacy. By legacy era, I mean the era before internet, when we had the main newspaper in town and the local network affiliate, right, and very few online outlets. So that's sort of the legacy outlet the legacy era I'm referring to, and we're so close to that probably still a lot of people are coming out of that, the first. And secondly, it's no longer a complete disadvantage to have a diverse professional background, if you were in business or you were in sales. Now publishers are wearing multiple hats, as I'm sure many of you know all too well. And it's a real advantage to have skills outside of journalism, if you can put those to use at your outlet. So that didn't seem to matter so much. And then I thought this was interesting. So advertising was the primary source of income for both struggling and thriving outlets. And this was not what we expected at all because of the emphasis on reader revenue and multiple sources of income. But 87% of thriving outlets said that their primary source of revenue was from advertising. And 65% of struggling outlets said that the same. You could see that 20% of struggling outlets are self-funded. So a lot of these, and these are the labor of love outlets. So that's what those numbers mean. But we also asked, how many of you have experimented with sort of non-traditional, meaning other than advertising? And there we found almost identical. So, 40% of both thriving and struggling publishers have experimented. So I thought that was suggestive of the fact that if you're making money with advertising and you're sort of bootstrapping it and it takes resources and time to start a new revenue stream, then why? I thought that was interesting, but we'll dig into that more in the future as well. So those were our main findings. The industry is changing, and I'm sure that if we do this study again in 10 years, we're going to see a different animal, right? We're going to see a different picture. So we're kind of trying to think of this as like a snapshot, and we wanted to produce sort of knowledge for centers like ourselves, Center for Cooperative Media, who that kind of goes around, but as most of you know, we're based in New Jersey, and we're sort of trying to be a hub for resources and stuff like that for publishers like yourselves. So again, thank you so much for having me, and happy to field any questions. And again, thanks to all of you who participated in the study.
Hi, I'm Tom Stites from the Banyan Project, which is pioneering a wholly different kind of business model, which is cooperative. But that's not why I'm standing here. I'm standing here because I have this other hat, which is called reporter. And since 2011, I've been writing about the phenomenon of news deserts. The good news is that for the first time, somebody has put together a bunch of data in a really reliable way that includes Lion data in terms of the communities that are served by online efforts that Lion tracks, not just members, but people who Lion knows about who are not yet members, and we suspect there are also some that we don't know about. The University of North Carolina has been running a Knight-funded study led by Penny Abernathy I wrote a story for the Pointer Lab that was supposed to go live on Monday when the database, which is searchable, was going to go live. Then they had a glitch. It's now been put off till next Monday. And so Pointer and Penny have agreed that they're going to put off publication, but they've given me permission to tell y'all the scoop that comes from this. That's the good news. The bad news is that the news is bad. So what Penny and she had 4 full-time researchers, 10 graduate and undergraduate students working with them. They melded the data from almost 60 statewide, regional, and national databases of newspapers, Lions data, and some other material that they got from other sources, and deduped it in a database and still had some pretty ambiguous stuff. And then they shook it out. They did web research. They did interviews. This took months and months and months. And when they get to the end of it, they had a baseline data of 9,000 newspapers being published in the United States in 2004. And they've now compared against that. And almost 20% of those newspapers have failed or merged. Now, these, we tend to think in terms of dailies. These are obviously all but a few are weeklies. But nevertheless, they're community newspapers doing community news. You meld in the Lions stuff and some startups and a few other things, and the bad news is that of the 9,000 communities that in 2004 had local news coverage from a newspaper, there are 1,300 communities in the United States that had news coverage in 2004 that have none whatsoever from a newspaper or from an online source now. So this is the story. If you on Monday it'll go live. I've got a couple of thousand words about their research and a bunch of other related research that will go live on Pointer. A couple of other pieces of news. There are 171 counties in the United States out of about 3,400 that have no newspaper or other kind of news source. Of a bunch of the counties without newspapers, there are exactly 2 that have online sources. Most of the newspapers that have failed were in suburban areas. Most of the actual news deserts where there's absolutely nothing, total aridity, are in rural places. And Penny and her folks did enough reporting on the existing or the surviving newspaper titles to come up with a new term, which is ghost newspaper. These are publishing. They still have a nameplate. They're identifiable, but they have cut their reporting staff, in some cases zeroed it out, and they're essentially shoppers, but they look like newspapers still, and they show up in some newspaper databases. Some of them have some civic value. Most of them have none. So anyway, that will be live on Monday. I'm sorry it wasn't here for you this week, but glitches happen in databases, so thank you. Why 2004? Why was that the baseline? Let me back up to this. They first did a 10-year outlook from 2004 for using 2014 data, which they published in 2016. Then they went deeper, and now they're going to 2018. In 2016, they didn't have as much, they were not as confident as they wanted to be in the baseline data from 2004, so they did more research. They filled out the 2004 database, and now they've analyzed it again in a very contemporaneous way. Or, no, it's not contemporaneous. Now, in other words, a current way.
Thank you for the sneak peek. Come on up, Dave. We're going to have another quick word from one of our sponsors who was slated to be on tomorrow, but we're going to squeeze him in right now so he can actually say his piece. Go ahead and pull up your slides. And while he's doing that, a couple of reminders. Make sure you put your bright ideas for sessions tomorrow up on the unconference board there, so we have plenty to pick from and we can fill in that schedule. There's some good ones up there already, but we could use a few more choices. And right after we hear from David Walsh. We are going to take a quick coffee break, and then we are going to go to the afternoon breakout sessions across the hall there. A reminder that when we're done with those breakout sessions, our evening reception is down on the 3rd floor in this building. So that's where you'll head on down for a drink once we go learn some more really great stuff. And tomorrow, don't come back to this building, because we won't be here tomorrow. We'll be over at 618 South Michigan Avenue, and we'll start there on the 2nd floor, just so you guys can remember that. I'll announce that a couple more times as we go along. And tell us what you've been up to.
All right. Can I put this here? Can you see that? It's loaded? All right. Oh, I can see it right there. Cool. I'm David Walsh, company's Web Publisher Pro. We are a development company that works exclusively with publishers, digital publishers, and multi-platform that also have print. So we do a lot of news sites, city magazines, parenting media, and we even have some very successful blogs that we manage. One of the big things that we're working on now is, for the past couple of years, publishers have asked us to build products such as events calendar, directories, assisting with memberships, helping with generating newsletter subscribers, jobs boards, obituaries, classifieds, all of these things. So we actually expanded our team this year and added 6 new people to build out these products, make them available to publishers. So the prohibitive part of that was a large price tag that comes into building a product that can actually be scalable and generate revenue. So we took that on to build those out so that we could then license them to publishers of all sizes to help generate revenue and new sources of revenue. This will also play in with advertising, generating membership subscribers, and giving additional features to help with that. As time goes on, we'll integrate with companies like Broad Street to help serve those ads. So this is just a quick preview of directory we're working on. So we're going to launch this with 5280, who's a city magazine out of Denver. So I'll just give you a little preview. So we'll have restaurants, events. The big thing that drives revenue is a voting platform. So they'll do lists, parenting medias will do like summer camps or private schools. City magazines, they'll do best doctors, best lawyers. So we'll actually have the voting capabilities, so users will be able to vote on the directory, and we'll promote that. There'll then be a sales funnel to generate sponsored listings and create revenue based off that. That's recurring. And I'll show you once you go into doctors. So this is what like a doctor's or dentist, or it could be anything. If it's schools, just replace the picture of the doctor with a logo for the school name. So if they were a top doctor, it'll be location targeted. So we'll get the user's consent, and then we'll serve listings based off proximity to them. You'll be able to filter by specialties, pediatrician, accepted insurances, hospitals. And I'll just show you the single listing. It would have support for multiple locations, hours, awards, insurance from the doctor, affiliations, all with advertising. That's the directory. We have similar products for Jobs Board and all the other ones I named. Jobs Board will be the next one we rolled out. We're going to launch that with a Lion member, Bethesda Magazine. They're not here this year, but we'll have that available early November. So we'll have some press surrounding that. But these are the types of things we do, if you don't know. And I'm happy to give demo or more information or anything after that. It's my 3rd year at Lion, and I'll keep coming back.
Always good to have you here. One more quick reminder. Where are you going to go tomorrow morning? Yep. All right. I just want to make sure. And where are you going to go when we are done with the breakout sessions? You guys know where the beer is. All right. Thank you very much.